I stood in the doorway, the crumpled medical report of Jenny's stage 4 cancer burning like a brand in my palm. The air in Henry and Joella's sleek apartment was sharp, with the sterile scent of polished wood and designer candles utterly devoid of warmth. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Chicago skyline glittered like a mockery, the city lights reflecting off chrome and glass, a life built for appearances, not for love. My children sat absorbed in their screens, swiping through endless distractions while their mother's fate stared me in the face.
"Help! Please, it's your mother!"
I pleaded, my voice cracking with desperation. Henry barely looked up, his gaze fixed on the phone. "It's your problem, Dad," he snapped, the words smooth and cutting, rehearsed in their cruelty. Joella nodded without meeting my eyes, her delicate fingers adjusting a gold bracelet that caught the light, her indifference as precise as Henry's dismissal. I took a trembling step forward, the paper digging into my palm. "She's your mother. She would do anything for you," I said, my words heavy, sinking uselessly into their apathy. The room smelled of Joella's floral perfume, sharp and expensive, a scent that mocked the scent of fear and grief that clung to me. I let the report fall onto the glass table. It landed with a soft thud, a fragile plea, instantly discarded. Henry flicked it aside with a single finger like it was nothing, his calm arrogance infuriating.
"You think I'm touching my savings for this?"
"Get real," he said, voice polished, cold, a man who closed deals and broke hearts with the same ease. I turned to Joella, my chest tightening. "You haven't said a word. Say something." She rose gracefully, heels clicking on the hardwood floor like deliberate taunts, and walked to the window, staring at the city lights as if the world outside mattered more than the life inside. "We can't afford it, Dad. You know that," she murmured, her tone soft but merciless. I could feel the weight of my sacrifices pressing down on me, every college tuition, every car, every vacation I had sacrificed, all the nights I worked overtime to secure their future while Jenny cheered them on. And now here they were, acting like strangers in a palace built by my hands. I raised my voice, trembling with fury.
"I gave you everything, and this is what I get."
Henry stood, looming over me, his suit immaculate, his expression impenetrable. "You made your choices. Don't guilt us into fixing them." The words struck like a whip, cutting deeper than any illness ever could.
I wanted to scream, to shake them, to make them feel Jenny's despair, her quiet, brave fear.
But their eyes were distant, frozen, already detached from the life they had taken for granted. I gripped the report, its edges biting into my skin, the last tangible piece of her in my hands, and I moved toward the door, legs heavy, heart heavier, a storm of grief and resolve swelling inside me. That night, I swore their betrayal would cost them everything, not out of vengeance, but out of justice.
I knew exactly how to begin. The room felt smaller now, the air thick and suffocating, pressing against my chest like a weight I couldn't shake.
My hand lingered on the doorknob as I glanced back one last time.
Henry was already buried in his phone again, scrolling with the same detached arrogance that had always enraged me.
Joella stood by the window, her reflection sharp and cold against the dark night, a mirror of her indifference. I wanted to shout, to grab their attention, to pierce their apathy with my grief, but no words came.
Only silence answered me.
The door clicked shut behind me, its sound cutting through the quiet like a verdict.
I stood alone, the report still clenched in my hand, the thin sheet of paper carrying more weight than any object in the world.
Their betrayal was not merely a wound, it was a promise I would see fulfilled.
I didn't yet know the how, only that they would feel this pain. Outside, my old sedan waited under the dim glow of the streetlights.
I slid into the driver's seat, the engine humming beneath me, a low, steady pulse against my racing heart. The crumpled report lay on the passenger seat, creases catching the light like faint scars. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. Henry's sneer echoed in my mind. "You're a mess, Dad." Juela's silence stung even more, sharper than any spoken insult. The cold Chicago night pressed against the windows, unyielding, a reflection of the truth I could not escape. My children had abandoned us. Jenny, fragile and brave, was at home, asleep, unaware of the betrayal swirling through the people she loved most.
I couldn't tell her, not yet.
She deserved hope, even if it was a lie. I shifted into gear, the car rolling forward, city lights blurring past, each street a reminder of how alone I was. The familiar smell of worn leather grounded me, anchoring me to reality, even as grief and fury churned inside. Every turn of the wheel, every passing lamppost reminded me that the fight was mine to bear, and I would bear it. Jenny's life and her memory demanded it, and when the time came, those who had turned their backs on her would face the consequences. At our modest house in the suburbs, the porch light flickered. Inside, Jenny's quilt draped over the couch, a remnant of her warmth. I crept past her bedroom, her soft breathing a fragile thread in the dark. In the kitchen, I dialed the bank.
"I need a loan," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest.
The clerk's questions droned on. Collateral, income, assets. I had little to offer, but the car and our savings scraped together over decades. Next, I called the dealer to sell the sedan. "It's old, but reliable," I told him, ignoring the pang of losing the car we'd driven to Joella's graduation. By dawn, I'd arranged to empty our retirement fund. It wasn't enough for the full treatment, but it was a start. My back ached, my eyes burned, but I kept moving. Jenny needed me too. In the hospital, the sterile halls smelled of antiseptic. Jenny lay in a narrow bed, her face pale but smiling when she saw me.
"You look tired, Henry," she said, her voice weak. "I'm fine."
I forced a grin, sitting beside her. "We're handling it." Her hand, thin and cool, squeezed mine. The gold of her wedding ring glinted, reminder of the day I slid it on her finger, promising forever. I wanted to tell her about Henry and Joella to share the weight, but I couldn't. Instead, I lied. "The kids send their love?" She nodded, trusting me.
I hated myself for it.
The doctor pulled me aside later, his face grim. "A month, maybe 2, he said. The treatment might buy time, but he didn't finish. He didn't need to. I paid what I could."
Every cent I'd scraped together.
Days blurred. Bank visits, hospital runs, late-night calls to insurers. Jenny grew weaker, her smiles rarer. I held her hand, told her stories of our early years.
Anything to keep her here.
But the cancer didn't care. One night, the monitor's beep slowed. Jenny's breathing faltered. I clutched her hand, her ring cold against my skin.
"Stay with me," I whispered, but she didn't hear.
The room was silent, save for the flatline's drone. She was gone.
I didn't cry, not then.
The anger was too sharp, too raw. Henry and Joella hadn't called, hadn't visited. They'd left her to die, left me to carry this alone. I slipped her ring into my pocket, its way to vow. They'd pay for this, not with blood, but with everything they valued. I walked out of the hospital, the corridor stretching endlessly before me. My steps echoed steady and sure. In my pocket, the ring pressed against my thigh, a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd make them lose. Rain tapped the polished wood of Jenny's casket, a single drop sliding down its edge. I stood alone on the muddy grass of the Chicago cemetery, my coat soaked through. The priest's voice droned, words about peace and eternal rest, but I didn't listen. My eyes fixed on the empty chairs lined up under the tent meant for family. Henry and Joella hadn't come. Not a call, not a text. The grey sky pressed down, heavy as my grief, but sharper still was the anger curling in my gut. They'd abandoned her in life. And now in death, the ceremony ended. The gravedigger's shovel scraped the earth, a rhythmic thud. I turned away, my shoes sinking into the wet ground. The drive home was quiet, the radio off, the world muted. Our house felt hollow without Jenny's laugh, her soft humming. In the living room, I sank into the armchair, its fabric worn from years of her sitting there reading. A photo album lay on the coffee table, its leather cover cracked.
I hadn't touched it in years.
I opened it, the pages creaking. A picture of Henry grinning in his first car, a used sedan I'd worked overtime to buy.
Another of Joella radiant at her wedding, the one we'd mortgaged the house to help pay for.
Each photo was a memory of sacrifice, of love, of a family I thought we'd built.
I'd been proud then. I believed they'd loved us back.
My fingers tightened, crumpling the page's edge.
How had it come to this?
I flipped faster, the images blurring.
Henry's graduation.
Joella's prom, a Christmas where we all laughed. Jenny's arms around them. My chest ached, but not with sadness, with betrayal. They'd taken everything, our money, our time, our trust, and thrown it away when we needed the most. I stopped at a photo of the four of us smiling at a picnic years ago. My hand froze. Their faces, so young, so happy, mocked me now. The album hit the floor with a thud, pages splaying open. I stood, my breath ragged. "Enough," I said aloud, my voice steady in the dark room. "They'll pay for this." The words felt right. Final. I wasn't the broken man who'd beg them for help. Not anymore. I crossed to the desk, pulling out my phone. Scrolling through contacts, I paused at names I hadn't called in years. Tom Harland, a lawyer I'd worked with decades ago. He'd know where to start. How to dig into Henry's deals. Joella's debts.
I needed information, leverage, a way to hit them where it hurt.
The rain tapped the window, its reflection dancing on the glass. I saw my face, lined and tired, but my eyes were sharp. I dialed Tom's number. The line rang once, twice. My heart thudded, not with doubt, but with purpose. I didn't speak when it connected, just listened to the static, the possibility. Whatever came next, I was ready. Rain streaked the cafe window, blurring the Chicago street outside. I sat in a corner booth, a cold coffee untouched, my fingers tapping the edge of a warm notebook. The place hummed, baristas shouting orders, chairs scraping, the air thick with espresso and chatter. I glanced at my watch. Susan Tom's contact from Henry's firm was late. My eyes flicked to the door, then back to the notebook, its pages already marked with names, dates, questions. This was my anchor now, my way to pull Henry and Joella down. The door chimed. Susan slipped in, her coat damp, eyes darting. She slid into the booth, clutching her purse.
"I shouldn't be here," she whispered, barely audible over the noise.
"You're here now," I said, keeping my voice calm.
"Tell me about Henry." She hesitated, then leaned in.
"He's been bragging deals that don't add up.
Off the book stuff.
Thinks he's untouchable." I opened the notebook, scribbling. "Who knows about this?"
"Only whispers,"
his boss might suspect. Her fingers twisted a napkin. "If it leaks, he's done." I nodded, my pen steady. Reputation was Henry's currency.
Lose it and he'd crumble.
"Anything else?" She glanced away. "He's been careless."
Emails, calls, I've seen some.
I pressed her, gentle but firm, until she gave me names, dates, a trail to follow. When she left, hurrying into the rain, I felt a spark. Not joy, but purpose. Next, I drove to Ron's office, a cramped space downtown stacked with files.
Ron, my old lawyer friend, leaned back in his chair, tie loose. "Henry's in deep," he said, tossing a folder across the desk.
"Shady investments. If the feds sniff around, he's toast."
"And Joella?"
I asked, flipping the notebook open.
Ron smirked.
5 credit cards, 2 missed payments. She's living a lie.
Instagram parties, designer bags, but she's drowning.
I remember Joella years back begging for a loan for some business. I'd given it no questions. Now her debts were my leverage.
"Can we use this?" I asked.
Ron's eyes narrowed. "Depends. What's your play, Henry?"
I didn't answer.
Back home, night cloaked the house, the only light from a flickering bulb.
I sat at the kitchen table.
The notebook open. My pencil traced lines.
Henry, reputation, Jewelates, arrows connected them.
A web of their own making. For the first time in months, I smiled. This wasn't just anger. It was control. I closed the notebook, slid it into a drawer and locked it. The house was silent, but my mind buzzed. I pulled out an old laptop, its keys stiff from disuse, and opened Henry's firm's website. Names, emails, a hierarchy of power. I started typing an anonymous message, fingers steady but heart racing. You should look into Henry Collins. Check his deals. The cursor blinked, waiting.
I stopped.
The screen's glow harsh on my face.
Was this enough or just the start?
The word stared back, a challenge I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. The laptop's glow cast shadows across my kitchen, the only light in the house. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the anonymous email half-written. Henry Collins off-book deals. Check the records. The cursor pulsed, a heartbeat in the dark. Jenny's ring tucked in my pocket, pressed against my leg. I saw her face pale in the hospital, her trust in me unbroken, even as our children turned away. Was this too far, hurting them like they'd hurt her? My hand trembled. No, they deserve this.
I hit send.
The screen flashed, message gone.
No turning back.
I leaned back, the chair creaking, and let out a breath. The house was still, the hum of the laptop fading as I shut it down. Sleep didn't come that night, but I didn't need it. I'd taken the first step. Morning broke grey and sharp. I walked to a park near downtown, needing air, noise, anything to drown the questions in my head. The paths bustled. Joggers, dogs, kids chasing pigeons. I sat on a bench, the wood damp from last night's rain, and watched the world move. A radio blared from a vendor's cart, catching my ear. Financial firm under scrutiny for irregular transactions.
My pulse spiked. Henry's firm.
It was happening across town in Henry's glass-walled office. He stood rigid, phone pressed to his ear.
What do you mean, an audit?
He snapped, his voice tight. Who sent that tip? His tie was askew, his confidence fraying. I wasn't there, but I could imagine it. His panic, his world tilting. Good. Back home, I checked the anonymous email account. The message was marked red. A reply sat in the inbox, brief. We're looking into it. My fist clenched, a quiet thrill running through me.
I'd done this.
Me, the old man.
And they dismissed.
I paced the living room. Energy I hadn't felt in years coursing through me. But a shadow lingered. Fear. What if they traced it back? What if I'd miscalculated? In the park earlier, the radio had kept going. No names released, but sources say key players are nervous. I'd frozen listening, my hands buried in my pockets. Now at home, I turned on the news, the anchor's voice filling the room.
Henry's firm again.
More details. Regulators involved. Reputations at stake. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. This was just the start. My phone buzzed. A text from Ron. Henry's freaking out.
What did you do?
I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering. No reply. Instead, I pulled out the notebook, its pages creased from use. I flipped to Juela's name, drew a new arrow. Debts. Exposure. Henry was reeling, but Juela was next. She'd built her life on appearances.
Time to tear them down.
I set the pen down, the notebook's pages rustling as I closed it. The sound lingered sharp in the quiet, a promise of what was coming. Henry's office was a cage of glass and steel, the Chicago skyline mocking him through the window. His phone vibrated, skittering across the desk, Juela's name flashing. He snatched it, his jaw tight. What now? He snapped, tossing a pen that rolled toward a hairline crack in the glass tabletop. The crack caught the light, a jagged reminder of the audit his boss had just announced, triggered by that anonymous tip. His deals, his reputation, everything was unraveling.
You screwed this up, didn't you?
Juela's voice was shrill through the speaker. Your shady deals are dragging us both down.
Me? Henry stood, pacing. You're the one flashing your debt-ridden life all over the internet. Someone's watching, Juela.
Someone knows.
I wasn't there, but I knew.
From a crowded cafe across town, I sipped bitter coffee. My phone opened to Juela's latest Instagram post, a forced smile at some glitzy event. The caption screamed confidence, but I saw the cracks. Ron had called earlier, his voice low.
They're at each other's throats. Henry's paranoid.
Juela's a mess, I jotted in my notebook.
Henry panic.
Juela facade crumbling. The pen scratched, steadying my pulse. In Juela's apartment, the air was thick with her perfume, but the room was chaos. Dresses strewn across the couch, wine glasses unwashed. She slammed the door, checking the locks twice.
If you hadn't been so careless, she hissed at Henry, who'd stormed over.
We wouldn't be in this mess. Careless? He tore a page from a notepad, crumpling it. You're bleeding money, Joella. This is on you. Their voices clashed, a symphony of blame. I didn't need to hear it to know they were fracturing, just as I'd planned. Years ago, they'd fought like this over toys, attention, and I'd stepped in, soothing, fixing. I'd believed in them. Now I watched from afar, their betrayal fueling me. Jenny's ring pressed against my thigh, a cold weight in my pocket. At the cafe, the clatter of dishes and chatter enveloped me. I scrolled through their profiles, noting Joella's frantic posts, Henry's sudden silence. They suspected a traitor, but never me, the old man they dismissed. My coffee grew cold. I dialed Ron. What's the latest? I asked, keeping my voice even. They're imploding, he said, chuckling. Joella's dodging calls. Henry's yelling at his staff. You got them good. I smiled, but it was sharp, not warm. I remembered their laughter, their small hands in mine. Could I have stopped this back then? No, they'd chosen this path. I wrote another note. Joella creditors push harder. The cafe's noise faded as I focused, the plan taking shape. Outside, I stepped into the evening air, the city's pulse quickening. A shop window caught my eye, its glass marred by a thin crack like the one in Henry's office, like the fault lines in their lives. I pulled out my notebook, drew an arrow to Joella's name, and whispered, "Your turn." My steps echoed on the pavement, deliberate, leading me forward. Rain slicked my coat as I pushed through the revolving door of Ron's office. The sound of my steps on the pavement still ringing in my ears. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and coffee, papers stacked haphazardly on the desk. A brass clock ticked on the shelf, its rhythm relentless, counting down the hours my children had left. Ron slid a folder toward me, his tie loose. Joella's drowning, he said. 3 missed payments. Creditors circling. Henry's firm. They're digging deeper. He's one mistake from a free fall. I flipped through the documents. Numbers blurring. Joella's debts. A second mortgage. Designer purchases she couldn't afford. Can we use this? I asked, my pen poised over my notebook. Ron leaned back, smirking. If you want her humiliated, tip off the creditors anonymously, they'll swarm. I nodded. The clocks tick louder now. Time was slipping, but I held the reins. At the Chicago Public Library, the air was heavy with the scent of old books. I sat at a worn table, surrounded by shelves, searching legal databases for leverage. My fingers flew across the laptop, pulling up articles on debt collection, bankruptcy laws. A librarian passed, her cart squeaking. Need help? She asked. Books on financial disputes? I said, not looking up. She pointed me to a stack and I dove in, jotting notes. Anonymous complaint. Creditor pressure. Public shame. Joella's life was a house of cards and I'd blow it down. Back home, night cloaked the house. The clock's tick now a faint echo from the living room. Jenny's clock, the one she'd wound every Sunday, its hands steady where mine weren't. I sat at the kitchen table, a blank page before me. Could I do this? Turn Joella's world to ash, as she'd done to us. I saw her at 5, paint on her cheeks, giggling as she drew with Jenny. My throat tightened. Was this what Jenny would want? I shook it off. She died alone, ignored by the daughter she'd loved. I wrote the letter to Joella's creditors, detailing her debts, her missed payments, her lies. The pen scratched, each word a brick in the wall I was building. I stopped, the clock's tick filling the silence. Was I a monster or a father seeking justice? I didn't know any more. I sealed the envelope, my hands steady. The house was dark, the air still. I checked the locks, slid the letter into my coat pocket, and stepped outside. The mailbox stood at the corner, its metal glinting under a street lamp. I hesitated, the envelope heavy. Jenny's ring pressed against me, urging me on. I dropped the letter in, the slot snapping shut with a hollow thud. It was done. The sound lingered, sharp in the quiet night, a signal of what was coming. Glass crunched under Joella's heel, the shattered mirror reflecting her frantic eyes. Her apartment was a war zone, silk dresses tangled on the floor, a spilled wine glass staining the rug. The creditor's letter trembled in her hand, its demand stark. Immediate payment or legal action. Her phone buzzed, a collector's voice cutting through. "We know you're dodging us, Miss Collins." She hurled the phone, her screams swallowed by the chaos. The broken mirror gaped, a jagged wound in her perfect world. Across town, Henry's office was no better. Papers littered his desk, his tie discarded. "You're telling me they pulled the deal?" He barked into the phone, his boss's voice cold on the other end. "Because of the audit, this is sabotage." He slammed his fist down, the crack in his glass desk widening. He didn't know who tipped the regulators, but his world was shrinking, his name tarnished. I sat on a park bench, the Chicago evening cool, leaves rustling in the breeze. My phone glowed with news. Collins' financial faces scrutiny. Major client withdraws. Ron's text followed. "Juela's a wreck. Creditors are hounding her."
I leaned back, the wood creaking under me.
Their pain was my doing, and it felt right. Sharp, clean, like a blade, finding its mark. Jenny's absence fueled me. Her ring a weight in my pocket, a reminder of why I'd started this. I remembered their silence, their ignored calls. As Jenny faded, they'd left her to die, left me to grieve alone. Now they'd taste that isolation. In the park, I spotted Juela from a distance, her sunglasses oversized, her steps unsteady. She passed without seeing me, her facade crumbling like the mirror in her apartment.
I almost pitied her. Almost. My notebook lay open, its pages marked with their downfall.
Henry's lost contract. Juela's public shame. They were bleeding just as I'd planned. But a shadow lingered.
Had I gone too far?
The thought nodded, but I pushed it down. Justice wasn't gentle. I stood, the park's calm at odds with the storm I'd unleashed, and started home. My phone rang as I reached the porch.
Henry's name flashed, a jolt through me.
"Dad," he said, his voice raw, broken. "We need to talk." I froze, the receiver cold against my ear. He sounded desperate, not defiant. Was this a trick or a crack I could exploit? I said nothing, my breath steady. I hung up, the click of the phone sharp in the quiet house. Whatever he wanted, I'd face it on my terms. The phone's click still echoed in my ears. Henry's broken voice cut off mid-plea. I sat in the dim living room, the silence thick, broken only by the faint creak of the house settling. Jenny's ring lay on the coffee table, its gold catching the lamplight.
I traced its curve, her last words whispering in my mind.
"Take care of them, Henry. Had I failed her by destroying them?" The thought stung, but their betrayal stung deeper. A sharp knock at the door jolted me upright. I opened it to find Henry and Juela on the porch. Shadows under their eyes, their usual polish gone. Henry's suit was wrinkled. Juela's scarf asked you. Her mascara smudged. "Dad," Henry started.
His voice.
"I lost my job, the firm."
They fired me.
Juela's voice cracked.
"They're taking my apartment."
"The debts."
"I can't pay."
She stepped closer, wringing her hands. "We're sorry, Dad, for everything. For Mom." I stood still. The rings weighed in my memory. Their faces, desperate now, were the same ones that ignored Jenny's calls, her funeral. I saw the empty chairs at the cemetery, the rain pooling where they should have stood. "Sorry," I said, my voice low, steady. "You left her to die alone." Henry flinched.
"We were wrong." "Okay, we didn't think. You didn't care."
I cut him off, my hand tightening on the doorframe. Juela sobbed, reaching for me, but I stepped back. "You begged for my help once."
"I gave it every time. And when I needed you, you turned away." "Dad, please."
Juela whispered, tears streaking her face. "We're family."
The word burned. Family. I believed in it once. I shut the door.
Their voices muffled as it clicked. My chest ached, but I didn't waver. They'd feel the pain they dealt.
Every ounce of it.
Later, in a bustling downtown cafe, the clink of cups and hum of voices surrounded me. Ron slid into the booth, a folder in hand. "You've got them on their knees," he said, grinning. "But we can go further."
A lawsuit.
"Demand repayment for everything you spent."
College cars.
"Juela's wedding." "It's legal and it'll crush them." I sipped my coffee, the bitterness grounding me. The ring pressed against my thigh, Jenny's voice urging me on. "Do it," I said, signing the papers.
Ron pushed over.
They need to understand, he nodded, gathering the folder. Court tomorrow. You ready? I didn't answer, just tucked the ring deeper into my pocket. Justice was close, but it wasn't sweet. It was heavy, final. Back home, my phone buzzed with Ron's text.
Lawsuit filed.
Court tomorrow.
I stood at the window, the street dark, a single street lamp flickering. This is for you, Jenny, I whispered, my breath fogging the glass.
The light's reflection danced sharp and unyielding, pulling me toward tomorrow. The street lamp's glow lingered in my mind as I sat in the Chicago courtroom, its wooden benches hard under me. The air smelled of polished oak contention. The judge's gavel a quiet fret on the desk. Across the aisle, Henry and Joella sat pale and shrunken, their lawyer whispering frantically. The lawsuit papers, crisp in my hand, detailed every dollar I'd poured into them. College tuition, cars, Joella's lavish wedding. Now I'd take it back along with their pride. The judge cleared his throat, reading the claim. Mr. Collins seeks repayment for financial support provided to his children, Henry and Joella Collins, totaling over $300,000. Murmurs rippled through the room. Joella hid her face, Henry's fists clenched, his knuckles white. Their lawyer stood, arguing they had no means to pay, that it was unfair. But Ron had built an ironclad case. Bank statements, receipts, my years of sacrifice laid bare. The judge called me to speak. I rose, the document heavy, my voice steady. This isn't just about money, I said, eyes locked on my children. It's about what they threw away. Their mother died alone because they wouldn't help.
I gave them everything and they gave her nothing.
The room stilled. I held up the papers. I made their lives possible.
And I made their fall.
The tip about Henry's deals. The creditors chasing Joella.
That was me.
Gasps echoed. Henry lurched forward, shouting, You ruined us! Joella sobbed, her shoulders shaking. The judge banged his gavel, but I didn't flinch. I saw Jenny's hand in that hospital bed, her ring cold, her breath gone. You betrayed her, I said, my voice cutting through their cries. You betrayed us both. Now you pay. The judge ruled in my favor, ordering repayment with interest.
Henry's face crumpled.
Joella's hands covered her eyes. I felt no joy, only a grim satisfaction. Justice wasn't warm, was sharp, final, like the gavel's crack.
I walked out.
The document folded in my coat, the evening air biting my face. The street was quiet, wind rustling through bare trees.
I'd won, but the victory was hollow without her.
I stopped at the cemetery's edge, its iron gates looming in the dusk. Jenny's grave was there, waiting. I touched the ring in my pocket, its curve familiar, grounding. The gates creaked as I pushed them open, their sound a call to finish what I'd started. The cemetery gates groaned as I stepped through, gravel crunching under my shoes. The evening sky burned pink, casting soft light on Jenny's headstone. Her name, etched in smooth granite, felt like a hand reaching out. I knelt, the grass damp, and set her ring on the stone, its gold warm from my pocket.
It's done, I said, my voice low.
They paid for what they did. The silence held me, broken only by a distant bird's call. In bed, I held her photo close, letting the edges press lightly against my chest. My breathing slowed, each exhale carrying a fraction of the weight I had carried for years. Justice had been done, not as a triumph of law, but as a quiet reckoning of the heart. I wasn't free from grief. No, that would come in time. But the anger that had burned so hot for so long was cooling now, settling into something softer. Clarity. Morning arrived like a whispered promise. Golden sunlight spilling across the room, painting every corner with warmth. The house, still hers in every way that mattered, felt lighter, almost expectant. I lingered in the kitchen, the aroma of coffee wrapping around me like a familiar hug. For a moment I closed my eyes and let myself remember her laughter. Not the fragile, hospital bed version, but the Jenny who had danced through life, fearless and alive. I walked slowly from room to room, touching the familiar surfaces, feeling the echoes of the life we had built together. The photo albums, the letters, the notebooks, they were no longer reminders of what had been stolen from us, but of what we had shared, what had mattered most. Outside, the world carried on, indifferent yet beautiful. Birds sang with careless joy. The wind carried stories of distant streets, and the horizon stretched endlessly, inviting me forward. I thought of Tom, of our long overdue fishing trip, and a smile crept onto my face. Laughter, I realized, was waiting for me, patiently, quietly, just beyond the shadow of what I had lost.
Life's smallest pleasures, coffee steaming in my hand, sunlight warming my skin.
The gentle hum of a normal day suddenly seemed miraculous. For the first time, I saw clearly that the rage and grief I had carried were not burdens I needed to haul forever. They had served their purpose. Now they were lessons, quiet teachers that whispered I could survive, that I could rebuild. That love, true love, remains even after loss. I stepped outside, inhaling the crisp morning air, and felt a strange lightness in my chest. The road ahead was uncertain, full of unknowns, but I was ready. Each step I took was a choice to move forward without forgetting, to honor her memory by living fully, fiercely, without fear. The sun climbed higher, gilding the world in gold, and I realized that endings are never truly endings. They are thresholds, doorways into something new. Her smile, soft and unwavering in the photo I still held, followed me like a quiet promise. And in that moment I understood, love does not vanish with loss, justice does not erase memory, but hope can bloom again, even from ashes. And for the first time in years, I felt it stirring within me, gentle but insistent, a light I could carry into every tomorrow. I put the photo down, closed the door behind me, and stepped into the world ready to start again. The past had shaped me, yes, but it no longer defined me. Today I would walk forward carrying her memory and my own heart, untouched by the shadows that had once held me captive.